All right,
Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. My host, GP John Poz, with me today, very special guest. You may know more, well, you may know him as Spellbinder or even Phantasio. He's, of course, Del Rios. Welcome in. How you doing?
I'm doing good, bud. I'm doing good. How you doing?
Very good. What's going on in your world? It seems like you're crazy busy. Square City Expo, the Gathering. You're crazy busy coming up.
Yeah, I had taken a break for a while. I had been working for close to 20 years, man. Whether it was USWA, WWE, WWF when it started, and man, just needed a break. So I went back to the my original. What I was doing was I was a competitive bodybuilder. I needed a break, and I just started competing again and taking it easy. You know that wear and tear on your body every single day, and sleeping in a different hotel, and it had just I just needed a break for a while, and so recently I was inducted into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame, and my name popped up all over again. Once I put my face paint on, I said, "Whoa, okay, this feels good." Let me give it another roll, and and here we are.
So what is gonna go on? Because I saw you got two new figures coming out as well, two new action figures,
Yes,
which is
man.
pretty
Yes.
cool.
So Rush Figures, uh, I guess they saw what was going on with the Hall of Fame, and I did I started doing other appearances. I flew to New York City to do an appearance there, and he got in touch with me, one of the head guys at Rush, and he said they were interested in doing the Spellbinder doll. They wouldn't do a Phantasio doll because Phantasio is owned by WWE, and the actual Spellbinder character is my property. I'm actually the one who came up with the whole character with the face paint, the magician, the whole outfit. Everything was me from the ground up, and I was doing that already. And of course, Vince didn't want to sign me as that because that wouldn't have been his property. So that right away he changed the name, and that's their property.
Of course, but that's awesome that after all these years, finally getting a figure. I love that. Rush is doing a great job with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it was they were working with me as far as the outfit, the look, everything, and they ran it by me, the prototypes and stuff, and they had me okay it or not okay it, or if I wanted something different. But it looks fantastic. It looks great.
Of course, the Squared City Expo is the 25th and 26th in Indianapolis, Indiana, of April for the
Right.
Squared Circle Expo, and then the Gathering is July 30th down in
Yes, sir.
Charlotte. So
Right.
you're super busy coming up.
Yeah, coming up, and I got some other stuff happening locally, here in Tennessee, and I'm open to to appear or wrestle or do whatever it is that anybody needs me for, and they can contact me through you or through Facebook or through my email.
When you are getting into the wrestling business, right? Like you said, you created Spellbinder, you created a character. How do
Yes,
you
sir.
get in? Like, how do you get in? What's the idea? What's like kind of like, hey, were you always a fan, or like, why did you want to kind of jump in?
Man, that's a really interesting story, and I'm going to tell you why. I was not a wrestling fan. Of course, when we're growing up, we watch wrestling and we think, okay, this is entertainment and stuff. But I wasn't a fan where I would go and watch it. I was born and raised in New York City, so it's not like I would go to Madison Square Garden and watch WWF when they came in and stuff. My brother, rest in peace. My brother wasn't as fortunate as me. He was born with kidney defect, so he was pretty much handcuffed on what he can do. But I was a bodybuilder, and I was an athlete all my life, and I had started competing as a bodybuilder, and he would always come to me and say, "Hey, you should be a wrestler. You're just as big as those guys, or bigger." And I was like, "Oh no." My thing was I wanted to be Mr. America or Mr. Olympia and stuff. I didn't want to do this, and man, it just came a time in my life where I was almost feeling a conviction for my brother. I was feeling, kind of bad because, he was in the situation he was, and here I am doing whatever I can do, and I was much healthier. So one day, I decided, as a surprise, I'm going to take him to Madison Square Garden. The Ultimate Warrior was wrestling, and there was a couple of guys in the gym talking about it and stuff. And I remember buying a few tickets and calling him and saying, hey, my brother's name was Jimmy. I said, Jimmy, you want to go watch that wrestling show? And he was like, oh, yeah, whatever. I said, all right, but it's tonight. And he goes, yeah, yeah. I said, all right, so let's meet at this certain time and we'll go, So I was pretty cool about it. I got some really, really good tickets. I would have to say we're about the fourth row from ringside. And, we're sitting there, and I remember watching the Heart Foundation coming on. I thought that was cool and stuff. There was a guy by the name of Mondo Clean at the time that was from Brooklyn, New York. And I had known him. I had met him at the gym a few times, but he actually had signed with WWF briefly. And he was in the show, and I thought, oh, there's Mondo. Okay. And I was talking to my brother, and here comes by one of the ushers, the security guys, and he leans over and says to me, what are you doing sitting here? You should be in there. And my brother heard that and said, you see, I told you, you should do this, this, and that. And I said, all right, well, now when I was younger, I was a magician. I did magic, birthday parties and all kinds of stuff. That was my hobby. That's actually what I wanted to do growing up, be a professional magician. But, growing up in New York City, that wasn't easy. You had to make a living as you got older. And I started, working out and bodybuilding. And so that led me away from that. But there was a good friend of mine, and he was pretty much a coach of mine, by the name of Jeff McBride, and he was a professional magician. He had an awesome character. He was a mime, and he did all kinds of manipulation and sleight of hand, and he was a master. And he was also, again, a good friend of mine and my coach. And my brain started, just throwing ideas around that night, working around. I said, if I can take something like Jeff McBride's character, which is a mime, and do the magic, because at that time you had Doink the Clown and you had all the Warlord, and those were all comic characters to me. And I thought, this white face guy can do magic in the ring and do certain things to be able to get the upper hand on his opponent. And I came up with that idea, and I said, that might be pretty cool right now. And then I thought, okay, I'll use the face paint, and I did that. And I talked to Jeff McBride about it, and he said, well, it's cool as long as you're not doing it in my field, in the magic industry. You're going to a totally different industry. That'd be fine, And I said, all right. So I came up with the whole thing. It just so happened that I was also training. I was a personal trainer at the time, and that's how I made my living in New York. I was training a gentleman, I can't remember his last name. Well, no, I was training Charles Koppelman, which at the time was the owner of EMI Records. Well, he had a lawyer that he had me train his lawyer a few times, Fred, and I can't remember his last name right off the bat. It was, it was 25 years ago. And he happened to be a lawyer for Vince McMahon as well. And during one of the training sessions, I ran it by him, and he thought it was a great idea. And he said, "Do you want me to say something, to somebody?" And I said, "Sure." Now here I am talking about putting the carriage before the horse. I didn't even know how to wrestle. I never been in the ring or anything. Now I had the body, right? I had the character, I had the look, I had everything. But I didn't have a clue as a professional wrestler. So in New York City, you had Johnny Rod's School of Professional Wrestling, and I looked that up. So I went over to Johnny Rod's school. He was charging a few $1,000s for the thing. I remember giving him $1,000, and I started, training in the ring. I didn't I didn't have a clue. I started learning to take bumps and stuff like that, and around that time, Johnny Rodz had produced some professional wrestlers. He had Taz coming out of there, Tommy Dreamer. He had Crash, the Annihilator, which was at that time was in Puerto Rico. Bill DeMott.
DeMott.
Yes,
Yep.
that was him. And as a matter of fact, about a week after I joined, Devon Dudley joined. Well, I mean, his real name is Devon, but not Dudley, of course. But I remember us practicing and training, together. And then I would imagine about a month and a half, 2 months later, I'd have to say about 2 months later, I went ahead and let Fred know, hey, I might be almost ready for this audition. You know what I mean? I didn't call it a tryout at the time, but I called it for this audition. And he said, all right, I'll say something. And then and then he was also friends with Sal Bandiero, who was a partner in EMI Records as well. It was, pretty, and they knew J.J. Dillon. And so that's how that started getting connected. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I didn't have a clue. I knew how to take a bump here and there. This is when it all changed. Because Vito Lagrazzo, Skull Von Crush, and then he did the other couple of gimmicks, the Italian and stuff. He was coming up through Johnny Rodz too. Now, Vito was a professional wrestler already. And him and I, we got along very well. So I owe everything, my whole start, to Vito, because he's the one. I went to him and I says, hey, I can get a tryout with with WWF, and he was looking at me like I was crazy, because that's what everybody's dream in the business was, to get that tryout, And I said, I can get that tryout, and he was, how'd you do that? I said, well, I'm training such and such, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. He goes, man, you're not even ready for WCCW, let alone, which was a local thing in Jersey that all the guys were working. And he goes, let alone WWF. And I went, all right, well, let's work as much as we could, And so he helped me put the videotape together, to send. He put a mask on and took some unbelievable bumps, and it made me look like, all right, let's get this guy in here. And so believe it or not, my first professional wrestling match was a tryout, a dark match at the WWF Monday Night Raw at the Manhattan Center when they I went out and did some magic on the way to the ring. I did a few effects, and I got in there, and then I did another effect, and then I took the mask off and did a few other things, gave the mask. So the intro was, whoa, okay, that's what a lot of the other guys do. And I happen to have the match with a student of, I can't remember, he was from Jersey, Mike, he had a wrestling school in Jersey.
Iron Mike Sharp?
Iron Mike Sharp, that was it. Thank you, bud. He had a student that they said, all right, let him have a match with Del. You know what I mean? They didn't want to call me Spellbinder. They didn't want to call me anything. They wanted to call me Del Rios. And I said, sure, whatever. Call me whatever you want. All right, he has the match. So the guy was pretty cool and took some good bumps. So the match wasn't horrible at all. I'd be the first one to tell you if it was absolutely horrible. You could tell I was green, but I did certain effects that had the people going, whoa, during the match. I would do magic in the middle of the match. And we got through it. And when we got to the back, one of the agents came and said, hey, do not leave. Vince wants to talk to you before you leave. And I said, oh, okay, cool. I mean, then I didn't do that bad, you know. And I remember having a little meeting with Vince after the live show, and he said, all right, I'm going to have JJ call you, and we're going to set something up. And you know, I liked what you did, and you look great. He said, you got a fantastic look, and you know, that's what we're looking for. Now, about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, J.J. Dillon calls me and says, hey, all right, well, look, here's what we want to do. You know, you can tell, you know, you haven't been in the business that long. So we want to put you under contract and send you to Memphis, Tennessee, and have you work with Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. And, you know, they have a TV show there. And that way you can get some experience. And, you know, once you get the experience, then, you know, we'll call you back up. Are you willing to do that? And I said, sure. You know, at that point I was committed, you know, so when you come to look at it, you know, and I was told this, I was the very first developmental, you know, guy that got signed under contract and sent to Memphis, Tennessee, you know, and that's where the developmental started in Memphis. Yep. And I started doing TV5, and really, that's how the whole thing took off, you know, just through that. But that's how the whole thing started.
And when you say like you're going to be Spellbinder, you're going to be a magician.
Yeah.
Vince is not on board with the name, but he's on board with the gimmick. He likes that.
He loved it. Yes, he loved the fact that that I was a magician. He loved the fact that I was a bodybuilder. Vince has always liked guys that look like, you know, good physiques and stuff. I kind of got over with the boys in the back, like Curt Hennig and a couple of the other guys, because I was doing some magic stuff backstage, you know, and they were getting a kick out of me, you know. So that was pretty good as well. So I'm sure a couple of the guys told him, man, yeah, that's a cool guy and stuff. So that, you know, that all worked for me. That all helped.
Yeah, usually they're going to have to make up a gimmick. You're already coming in with your own gimmick. You're already making one up as you're walking in.
Absolutely. Man, I don't know if that helped me or that hurt me. You know what I mean? Because I had it all already. I had it all set except for the name. You know what I mean? I remember they called me Del Rios. They called me Magnificent Maurice. They called me. I was doing different shows, different house shows, and they were calling me a different name. You know what I mean? So I think that was a rib on me, which didn't bother me. I didn't care. You know, I was working. And then the fact that I was doing USWA, so we were working. I was working, you know, 6 days a week, which is, you know, how you get the experience, how you get better, you know, and that's doing that every single day is, you know, how I learned to work.
When you're looking at it too, it's like, okay, this is going to be something different, something completely new, right? I mean, you're going to be going down to Memphis and you're going to be learning how to wrestle. So what was that experience like? And like, who kind of helped you along the way?
Man, so when I first got to, I got to tell you, man, that when I was dealing with who and where, when I was going to get to Memphis, I was dealing with Jerry Jarrett, which, you know, was, I guess he was either busy or they didn't care or, you know, whatever. But I found myself having to continue to call because they would say, okay, I'm going to call you at this time, at this date. And then I wouldn't get a call. Now, the reason it was important to me was because I had clients. I was a very, very busy personal trainer. You know, I would train up to 7, 8 clients a day. And when I announced to them that, hey, you know, this thing might not last too much longer because I'm getting this opportunity, and you know, they were like, oh my God, you know, but you got to let us know. You got to let us know. I didn't want them to call me on a Tuesday and say, hey, we're going to have you fly out Thursday. And then me having to go back to the clients and say, hey, okay, I'm out. You're going to have to find yourself another trainer, which is unprofessional as all get out. And I just didn't feel good about it. It did not sit well with me, And I realized that I was at the mercy of whenever they wanted me or needed me. But at the same time, I had a responsibility here, in New York City, to to do right by the people that had been paying me, and they were paying me a lot of money, and they were totally loyal. You know what I mean? They would train anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week. And so I mean, to say they were paying my bills was an understatement. And I just felt like I can't, so at one point I did say that to J.J. Dillon, and it wasn't on him at all. You know what I mean? It was more on Jerry Jarrett, because he kept putting it off. And finally, I told J.J. Dillon my situation. I said, well, look, I don't want to leave my clients hanging like that. I don't want them to, just, okay, I'm out, and then, they're holding the bag. That's not how I want to do things. And JJ was super cool. He understood, and he goes, I'll never forget it. He said to me, well, it sounds like I need to give Jerry Jarrett a call and get this over with. And I said, well, I appreciate it. Thank you. We hung up, and not an hour later, Jerry Jarrett calls me and says, Del Rios. And I said, yes, sir. And he says, can you be here Friday night? And thank goodness that was on a Monday. So now I had 5 days to let these people know, hey, I'm going to leave Friday. And I said, yes, sir, no problem. I had the flight and everything ready to roll. And I can just tell you this, man, and this is no offense to anybody, but I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, in Manhattan, when my mom lived in Manhattan. And, there's nothing but buildings there, and you can get whatever you want. The whole time I'm thinking in Memphis, Tennessee, I said, good Lord. I said, what? Memphis, Tennessee, where Elvis Presley's from. I'm thinking I'm going to fly into a bunch of barns and, animal stock houses and stuff like that. And, that's what I'm thinking. Thankfully, when I got here, it wasn't what I expected. But, you get a guy that was born and raised in New York City, and you're talking about a southern town, you don't know what to expect, But when I got here to Memphis, I was pretty much alone for a little bit, for about a week or so. Then I started to ride with, rest in peace, Jeff Gaylord, the Missouri Tiger, who wrestled for a number of years. Then that's, and see, I didn't party, I didn't hang out. My thing was going to the gym and being in the best shape I can. And at first I'm thinking, all right, I got to get as good as possible, as fast as possible, so I can head back to WWF. And I kept working on doing that. Then I kicked it off with Brian Lawler, which was Jerry Lawler's son. And him and I, were pretty good friends. And so I started riding with him. I stopped living in a hotel and rented an apartment in Memphis, because I thought, okay, this is going to be a little bit more permanent than what I was. So him and I, we started getting really tight, and I started riding with him. And he's pretty much who started teaching me, the ropes and how to do things and what to do and what not to do and stuff like that. So then it turned into a thing where I wasn't in a hurry to go to WWF anymore. When I was working 6 days a week, and when WWF called me, I'd go work with them, and I start, then that what was going on for a number of years. I was going just back and forth. I would do, a few house shows, WWF, then I'd do USWA, and Memphis was working. They were working 6 days a week, and so I got it to where I was like, all right, this is working for me because now I'm getting a check from USWA, I'm getting a check from WWF, and I'm getting a lot of money for for gimmicks and pictures and stuff like that. So I was doing okay. I was doing okay, but it was Brian, my friendship with Brian, that really blossomed everything because now, everybody respected Brian because he was way ahead of his time as a worker and a professional wrestler. He was Jerry Lawler's son, so you didn't mess with him either, and he had a lot of experience. He had been riding with his dad since he was a little kid, so he knew a lot about this business. A lot of stuff that from behind the scenes, and he had a fantastic. People didn't know Brian. The people that didn't know Brian before Brian went to WWE, WWF, missed the whole boat. Brian was a totally different person. Brian was a technician. He was a genius when it came down to the business. He would just lay things out in the car, as we were driving to a town, and it'd be like 3 hours. Some of the best matches I had was with Brian. He'd lay them out to where, and nobody get hurt, and the people were on their feet. You know what I mean? And he never got the credit that he pretty much deserved.
One of those guys gone way, way, way too soon, obviously, but he started getting into the wrong type of stuff.
Yeah, bad. You know what I mean? And to this very day, I've never drank a beer, gotten high. I have not done anything. You know what I mean? Believe me, I'm not trying to claim I'm a saint. I've done my share of anabolic steroids. You know what I mean? So to say I've never done drugs, I would be lying, which that's not what I do. If I'm guilty of anything, is doing as many anabolic steroids as anybody else or more. Never did anything recreational or anything like that. But one thing I can tell you from witnessing, that can destroy somebody's life, faster than anything. If you're doing anabolic steroids, then you start doing recreational drugs, now you got trouble. You got a lot of trouble. And Brian, unfortunately, I think the more success he got, after he went full time into WWE, is when his downfall came. And I'm not blaming the company at all. It's the person. The person has to say, okay, I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this, and he did it. And I was the first one to tell him. When a couple of times, he got hired and fired a few times, and I was the first one to tell him. He goes, "Man, you blew that one." I said, you weren't supposed to be doing what you're doing, and doing nonsense like that. It was different when he was in USWA or any type of southern show. You know what I mean? People would how can I put it? People would he would do stuff like get there super late, and people were like, all right, whatever, get dressed. Well, you can't do that in WWF. You can't do that. No, that's not. I don't care who you are. If they told you to be there, listen. If they tell you to be there on TV at noon, and you walk in, and you got guys like Hulk Hogan there already, and Macho Man's there already, Scott Hall's there, Kevin's there. I mean, who are you to act like you can be late? And that's what I told him. I said, you can't do stupid stuff like that. That's just not acceptable. Number one, it's not professional. Number two, it's irresponsible. You know what I mean? Then you come in like that, who's going to trust you in the ring to give you their body? That's not going to happen. And, so I'm a firm believer in you got to do what's right always. And it didn't work out for him. But you're 100% right. He was my best friend. I loved him to death. And, you know, what happened with him was just horrible. You know, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't surprised, you know, when I got the call. You know, my wife and I, you know, we rushed straight down to the hospital. And, you know, all I can do is, you know, say, well, you know, this was coming.
Yep.
You know, that was it, you know.
Yep. Now, just rewinding a bit to the
Yeah.
WWF days, like
Uh-huh.
when you get to WWF, obviously, like you talked about before, they didn't want you to be Spellbinder. They wanted you to be Phantasio, so Vince can kind of own the name. So how does he say, like, hey, I want to call you up to TV and let's check out this gimmick? You know, we're gonna
They
put it
did
on
it.
TV once.
I can tell you what, man. I went up to a boatload of TV tapings. Okay, they taped. I mean, I worked guys like, you know, Rad Raffers, Chris Candido, Mark Henry. I worked a bunch of guys. Good matches, you know. Just thinking back, they just televised that one, and that was it. You know, I was working a lot of house shows. You know, I was. Oh man, I remember working Mark Henry. I would have to say about 4 weeks in a row, 5 days a week. You know, stuff like that. And I'm going to tell you something. And this is Scott Hall said this to me. I wasn't a mark about things. You know what I mean? You know, a lot of times, I'm not going to mention names or anything, but I saw handfuls at a time of the developmental guys coming in and always asking, man, when are they going to call me up? When are they going to call me up? I didn't pay that I didn't pay that any mind. I didn't care, you know. Wherever I was booked, I was going to go. I was going to have the best match that I can have, get dressed, and do what else I was doing, whether it was WWF, WWE, or USWA, or wherever else they sent me. I wasn't going to mark out. And Scott Hall paid me a compliment, God rest his soul, a number of years ago at a TNA taping, and he said he had realized that about me. One time he was working Sid Vicious in the main event in Memphis at the Coliseum, and I was a semi-main, and we were just in the back talking, and he told me that. He goes, you know, Dale, you know, because he kept saying, man, so they sent you back down here. See, they would send me up, and then they would send me back down. Then would send me up, then would send me back down. And I guess people thought I was aggravated by that, but no, I wasn't. To be totally honest with you, whenever I came back to Memphis, USWA, whatever, to the tour, I felt more at home. You know, when I was doing the house shows for WWF/WWE, that was cool because everything was more calm. You had your match, you know, you hung out in the back. The TV tapings were just stressful as all get out. You know what I mean? Very stressful. It was stressful because it was a stressful time. At that time, Vince was in trouble. You could feel the stress when you got to the TV taping. You know, I remember one time we were going to do, it was Louisville, Evansville, then Little Rock, I think. And I remember getting to Louisville, and Brian comes over to me and says, did you hear? And I said, what? He says, they just let Barb go. They told Barb to go home. I said, no, really? And I said, but you could feel the tension because everybody felt like, who's next?
Right.
That was the most uncomfortable feeling. You could tell. I mean, it was just, you know, it wasn't a good feeling to me. So I remember I was doing Louisville, then I did Yeah, I did Evansville. No, okay, I'm sorry. It was Louisville, Evansville, St. Louis. In St. Louis, we got there, and I had a match with God rest his soul. Good Lord, he's passed away too. Radford, Louis Piccoli,
Yep.
and we had a heck of a match. And I remember one of the guys saying, "All right, Dad, well, look, you got, we're gonna go. We're gonna give you a call here in the next week, whatever." But I was 2.5 hours, no, about 3 hours from Memphis, and I remember being happy, saying, "Oh, cool, I'm going back to Memphis." So I drove back to Memphis, and I remember going, "Whew, wow." So I was doing the Monday Night Coliseum, then I was going Tuesday to another town, Wednesday and Thursday, and I never said anything to anybody. I never knocked it, never, but thinking back now, I was like, I remember doing the same when I flew. I worked Chris Candido in Houston, and I remember getting on a plane and meeting everybody from Memphis in Kentucky. I flew into Louisville and then drove. And I remember when I get into the dressing room and just smiling and having a good time again. It was just a stressful time there up in New York.
The funny thing is, like, the gimmick itself, okay, Phantasio, you're a magician, but I feel like Vince put his touch on it. Maybe I'm wrong on that, with the underwear, pulling the underwear out.
Well, that was
that like
my idea.
okay? Because I feel like he would think that was hilarious. I feel like he would
Yeah,
love that.
It was. That was my idea from the beginning. Because see, it was just stuff that they didn't see on TV that I had done. If you remember from that match that they showed on TV, I came in doing magic. In the middle of the spots, I did magic. At the end, I did magic, and that was my way of going into the finish.
Even the ref too.
Right, and the ref, right. Well, that was my idea as well. I had picked up a pair of shorts with black stripes on them. You know what I mean? I remember going to Earl Hebner and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna gimmick these shorts right here in the back of your pocket here. Boom. I'm gonna put this loop here, and boom. Nobody's gonna know. They can't see it, but I'm gonna know where it is. And when you turn your back, after I take his and I roll him up 1, 2, 3, and he gets out, and I show the underwears as you're walking towards the ring, just act like you're saying something to the timekeeper, and I'm gonna pull yours." And he said, "Oh yeah," you know what I mean. And so we did it, and I remember that first match, and people just, they were with it from the beginning. As soon as I walked out with the torch, you know what I mean? People were like, "Whoa." Then I turned it into a cane. Whoa. And I walked on. People were like, "What in the world?" And I came in and did the ring. I did the top hat explosion. And all I got was audience reaction. Okay. The worst reaction, and I won't mention names, but Men on a Mission came over to me. And Nelson Nabel says, "Man, that was awesome." He goes, "That was awesome." Then his partner came in. He goes, he was nodding his head. He goes, "Man, you're going to go up." Now, I'm not going to mention this guy's name because I don't want to put any heat on him. But he came over to me and he goes, "You might be a bit too good for your own good." And I remember looking at him and like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Later on, I thought about it. And I'm not saying anything, it just felt weird, like somebody's not going to like that this gimmick is this good or can be, because this is how I look at it. I don't care how great you are. I don't care what you can do. And I don't care what your gimmick is. If the commentators, Vince, whoever it is, Jerry Lawler, any of those guys, Dave Brown, if they don't push you, and if they don't condition the crowd to think, "Okay, this guy's awesome, look at him," this and that, and you're not going to mean anything anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because,
Yep.
and I'm not just talking about WWF, WWE, I'm USWA, WCW. I've seen some pretty, horrible acts, horrible gimmicks, and horrible workers that were put over way more than they should have. And that's just the business. You know what I mean? And that's just the way it is. So, I'll never forget that. So, who knows? You know what I mean? I've got a bunch of different people as to, why they did this, why they didn't do this, why it could have been like that, but it wasn't like that. It means nothing to me. I wasn't a mark for the business like that. You know what I mean? I worked and worked as much as I wanted, I never, it wasn't like I was staying home twiddling my thumbs. You know what I mean? I was working, and that's all it meant to me.
Yep.
It was a job, and I was getting paid, and I kept my mouth. See, the biggest thing was, and Steve Lombardi and Bruno Lauer paid me a good compliment about it because they did the same. The main thing is just keep your mouth shut. You know what I mean? Keep your mouth shut. Don't complain. Don't say anything. And I kept getting the check from WWF, from WWE. I mean, way longer, way longer. You know what I mean? Than a lot of other people. You know what I mean? I watched a lot of people come and go, and I just sat back and kept reaching into my mailbox and getting a check every week. You know what I mean? If I would have run my mouth and said, why am I not being used? Or why is my gimmick not being pushed? Or why this, why that? And then they say, okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to send you your release. And, that'd be that. But no, I didn't. It didn't matter to me. I didn't care,
So was it politics from other wrestlers above, like why you weren't used again on TV? Is that like kind of what was going on?
I don't know concretely, supposedly part of that. Yeah, supposedly, could have been, it was that. Some people, and I don't want to mention names. They told me things in confidence, but supposedly some of the agents up there didn't like a lot of the boys from Memphis territory and stuff like that. It whatever it wasn't because I just completely sucked. You know what I mean? That's for sure. Because I was working every day anyway.
Yeah.
So, right, it wasn't that. So it could have been. It doesn't matter to me. At all. At the end of the day, like Vito told me, I'm in the encyclopedia. I made all the I made a lot of the magazines. You know what I mean? I worked way more than people thought. You know what I mean? And I worked in the WWF, WWE ring over and over and over again. So, but think about this. Looking at it back, it really doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Whether you're Hulk Hogan, Phantasio, Macho Man, or the Ultimate Warrior, you're gonna go up and go down, and that's it. And people are gonna move on. You know what I mean? And that's how that's when I look at it like that, I just shrugged my shoulders. I said, okay, they might have they might have made more money than me. You know what I mean? But it really doesn't matter. You have your time, and then you don't have your time anymore. You know what I mean? Everything runs its course. So and then I'm having I'm enjoying the fact that a lot of people, a lot of promoters and people are trying to get a hold of me because supposedly I'm like a rare character, surfacing
definitely.
again.
Definitely.
Because, people that are trying to get their encyclopedia signed, whoa, fantastic. We haven't seen him in who knows how long, Phantasio, Spellbinder or whatever. And, being inducted into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame, I might sound like a mark, but, that's being with the likes of Rock and Roll Express and Bill Dundee and Jerry Lawler and Koko B. Ware and all those guys, that's not something to cough at.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? Yes, sir. So, I guess I put my footprint in the business, and that was fine. Yeah, I'm happy where I'm at or what I'm doing. So I have no regrets at all.
So, like, when you actually get released, are you wrestling for like PPW or is it USWA at this point? Like, where are you, like, when you actually do get released from WWF? Like, are you still with developmental at that point? Because I know they
Yeah.
actually
Oh yeah,
kept
man.
going with
Oh
developmental
yeah.
with Randy Hales and everything else.
Yeah. Listen, you remember when? Do you remember when PPW was Power Pro Wrestling? Do you remember in Power Pro Wrestling when you had oh man, Shooter Schultz was there, Daniel Bryan was there. He was the Dragon or something.
Yep.
Victoria
American
was
Dragon,
there,
yeah.
Bobcat, all those guys. Well, I was with them as well, still getting paid.
Wow, so you were there for a long while. My God.
Long time. Right. Just kept my mouth shut. You know what I mean? I remember we were doing a show. Kevin Kelly shows up. And that was the thing. When an agent came in, when some type of an agent came in to the show or to the TV taping, you'd get 5, 6, 7, 8 of these guys crowding him saying, hey, when are we, what's going on? I didn't do that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I kept my mouth shut, got dressed, had my match, got undressed, showered, did my thing. That's all. I didn't care Kevin Kelly was there. It didn't matter to me. It wasn't. What these guys didn't understand was a lot of times they'll put you in this developmental to get you away for a while. You know what I mean? You need to take that as an opportunity to just work and just get better and just, pray and hope that they come up with something for you.
Yep.
And that's it. And a lot of the guys, man, I remember the Mean Street Posse, Joey Abs. What was the other? I can't remember the other guy's name.
Pete Gas and Rodney.
Yeah, Pete Gas and Rodney, man, they were super cool guys, man. And I remember when they got released, man. It was terrible. You know what I mean? Joey was cool. He just said, all right, man, well, I'm done. And Pete, went back up north. I think he lives in Connecticut or something. And, man, I remember Rodney just being really angry and saying that they messed up his life. You know what I mean? And I thought, oh, man, they put everything in one, See, because now that's all coming back to me. A lot of those guys like Mean Street. So they moved to Memphis and moved their wives there and, took wherever they were, they just picked up and left everything and just came over, and that's where they thought, okay, when we get back, we're going to be big time, and it didn't work out, Great for Kurt Angle, it worked for him really good.
Yep.
Did good for Victoria. It did good for, I think it did pretty good for Bobcat. I know she went up for a little while.
Yeah, she's like the nurse or whatever, and then
right.
Yep.
And then a good friend of mine, Kevin, man, I can't remember his name, but he was Kevin Thorne. He did the vampire gimmick.
Mordecai, yeah.
Mordecai, right. I
Kevin
remember
Thorne,
when
yeah.
he
Kevin
used to work
Fertig.
at Gold's Gym here in Memphis. I don't live in Memphis, but when I remember when I was in Memphis, he used to work at the Gold's Gym there. And, he would ask us questions and stuff like that. And he finally, worked his way up where he was, doing stuff, and it was good for him for a while. So I mean, I really believe that it was just however you took it, however, you had to be able to roll with however way it went. I was fortunate. I made really good friends with Brian. You know what I mean? And this is Jerry's company, and Brian's best friend. So they kept me in the company no matter what. So it worked out for me. All through Power Pro. Yeah, I got a check from them all through Power Pro.
Then you ended up in TNA, right? Eventually?
Yes.
Just for one show, I think, just for the gauntlet for the gold NWA World Title
Well,
match.
and then I did a few dark matches afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that and I did that because they were going to come up with they wanted me to come up. No, Brian had talked to Jeff Jarrett about doing this whole angle, and that's how they were going to bring in Scott Steiner. They were going to have me act like Scott Steiner for about 5, 6, 7, 8 shows. And then they were going to show where Scott Steiner would come in and like somebody's impersonating him. And then him and I were going to go face to face and stuff like that. And then he finally, obviously, I put him over sooner or later, which I didn't care, But, then we started going a different direction. So, and I did a few more, shows with them. I did all kinds of stuff, man. I remember having to put on La Parka's outfit, which didn't fit me. I was busting out of it, you know what I mean? And I did an angle with that. And then I did their Spanish commentating for a little bit in TNA. Awesome. And that ran its course. And but that was going into already about 15, 16 years. So I was already getting like, all right, I'm going to start, I want to start relaxing, you know what I mean? Then I started doing shots here and there. And before you know it, I was just bodybuilding and started competing as a bodybuilder and was just, getting calls and stuff like that. And, I remember Lucha Underground called me. Do you remember when that company in California opened up, Lucha Underground?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
That was Rikishi's cousin. He's trying to put that together. And I remember him calling Brian Christopher and saying, hey, man, is Dell still real big? And Brian said, yeah, he's huge. He's competing as a body. He goes, well, tell him to fly over here and we can take care of this and that. And I told Brian, I ain't doing it, man. I tell him I'm sorry. I'm okay. Tell him thank you for thinking about me, but I can't do that right now, whatever. So, I mean, I had opportunities to continue, you know what I mean, and do independence. And I turned something else pretty big down in Germany. It was in Germany. It was in Germany. Yeah, I think it was. And they had called me, and I said, no, I'm taking a break right now. And, and that's how it worked out, and I'm okay. You know what I mean? Thank God I never had any really, really horrible injuries. I did tear my patella in my knee, had it repaired. Other than that, I'm 100%, healthy, thank God. And I can still work, no problem, whatever. I keep myself in the best shape ever. The best compliment I ever got was a few weeks ago when I had my Spellbinder Phantasio character on, and I walked out of the dressing room into another room, and there was a gentleman there, and he says he looked at me and he says, "Oh man, Dell," and I looked at him like, what's going on? He goes, "You look like you walked out of TV 20 years ago." And I said, well, thank you, man. You know what I mean? That was probably one of the greatest compliments I ever got because I haven't changed. I really haven't. People look at me and they go, man, you look like you did 20 years ago. I said, well, that's the point. You know what I mean? That's the point of the whole thing. You know what I mean? To try to keep what you got, and so I'm pretty proud and happy about that. So most of the people, or 99.999 of the people that, see me back in the Spellbinder character, Phantasio character, are usually very, very, very pleasantly surprised. You know what I mean?
Well,
And I'm really, really proud of that fact.
now, as we start to head for the wind down here, we head towards the finish. Have to mention, of course, go to rushfigures.com. Rush Collectibles has the new Spellbinder figure, which looks awesome. And obviously, it's rare as hell because it's your first your figure, and it's awesome. You can also see you at the Squared Circle Expo, April 25th and 26th at the Wyndham Indianapolis West in Indiana. And of
Yep,
course, the Gathering 6 in Charlotte, North Carolina, starting on July 30th.
that's right. Absolutely.
Anything else going on or anywhere else where we can find you?
Um, Man, I tell you the truth, I got a handful of dates, and I'm sorry, I don't have it here in front of me. But you can look me up on Facebook, and you can see that my wife will be posting stuff here, where I'm going to be and where I'm going to appear at. And, you can come say hello and, get yourself a picture, and I'd be my pleasure to, take a picture with you and sign. And, I don't be offended. I do not speak when I have the Spellbinder character on. Remember, he is a
You're
mime.
miming it. Yeah, yeah. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, usually people look at me and they'll start talking to me, and I'll look at them. And usually, if my wife's with me, she'll start answering their questions for me and remind them that I'm a mime. You know what I mean? So,
Yep.
that's the way it works. That's the way that character works.
I love it. Well, Del Rios, aka the Spellbinder, aka Phantasio, thank you so much for all the time today. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. It's been my pleasure. You're class act. I like the show, and hopefully we'll do it again.
Yes, definitely will do. Thank you so much for all the time tonight.
Absolutely, man. Have a good night.